Ken Rosenthal believes the Dodgers are down and will get Tanner Scott or Devin Williams. Which one should they get? And what will the rest of the bullpen look like in 2025? Let's talk about it. Let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. This is a daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can become an everydayer by listening or watching every day, and you can make that easier on yourself by subscribing and get notified when our episodes are ready or when we're going live, like we are here on YouTube on Thursday night. If this is your first time listener watching, welcome. I'm Vince Samperio. That's Jeff Snider. Jeff and I have been doing this podcast going into our 7th season now. We've been covering the Dodgers going into our 11th season now, covering the Dodgers in a few different ways. We've been in the press box, we've been in the locker room, we've been to spring training, we've been in Dodger Stadium, we've been around the country to watch the Dodgers, and we're here to continue to talk about the Dodgers because why not? They are the World Series champions. They have a lot going on for them. They continue to get better, and Jeff, it would appear the Dodgers are trying to get even better than they already are.
Yeah, which makes sense. Like I've said before, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. And so the Dodgers do still have some holes on their team. And I think one position that pretty much every team would consider a hole just because of the volatility there is the bullpen. I don't think any team has ever felt so comfortable with their bullpen heading into a season. They think, yeah, we don't need any more help there.
Yeah, I mean, even last year, you could have felt somewhat comfortable about the Dodger bullpen, and then a bunch of injuries and a bunch of other things happened, and guys that we thought might be in the bullpen had to be in the rotation, and Bruce Dargratto barely pitched the whole year, and now he's going to be out next year, and there's a lot of different moving pieces when it comes to the bullpen, but we've talked a lot about Tanner Scott and Devin Williams already, and there was even a report that Kirby Yates was kind of thrown into that mix for relievers of Dodgers, maybe going after Ken Rosenthal. In one of the articles or times he spoke or whatever it is throughout there that he believes the Dodgers will get at least one of Devin Williams and Tanner Scott. And while we've talked about them and we both thought that Devin Williams, we both had him slightly above Tanner Scott. We can get a little more granular with it, and we can even throw Kirby Yates in there if we want to, and see if that's maybe a better or different fit than or consolation prize, I guess, if they don't get one of these guys.
Yeah, Kirby Yates is a interesting one. I think it's just my internal bias, just because the Dodgers were the one team that did okay against him back when he was dominant with the Padres. And now he's 37 years old and was bad for a couple of years. I actually, just while you were talking, I pulled up his baseball reference page and was surprised to see what a good season he had. I knew he had been on the All-Star team, didn't realize how good he was last year. I'd still much rather go with one of the younger guys and with a guy with a little bit more sustained success. But I'm not sure that 2019 and 2024 are close enough together for me to believe that Kirby Yates will be great in 2025. But yeah, I've been thinking a lot about Devin Williams and Tanner Scott all day since most days, but especially since Ken Rosenthal said he believes the Dodgers get one of them. And like most things, it comes down to, for me, why not both, but I keep going back and forth on which one I would rather have, because there's really, really good arguments for both guys.
Yeah, it's for me, I think, obviously, if they did trade for Devin Williams, I'd like them to get an extension going. But I think if you're going to give up some prospects, and, it's obviously always going to come down to what it costs. And if it costs, Dalton Rushing, then no, I wouldn't, make a trade involving him for 1 year of Devin Williams. But, if it costs maybe a lower tier guy. I know Gavin Lux's name always gets thrown in there. I'm not really sure if that's something that the Brewers are looking for, but it could be. If the cost is right, I'd rather have Devin Williams, because if he's bad, then, okay, go into free agency and have fun. If Tanner Scott's bad and you sign him to a 3, 4, or 5 year deal, then, now you're looking at, okay, is he bad now, or did he just have a bad season? What can we do? And then you're on the hook for, 15 to 16, 17, up to 20 million, I guess. I don't think it'll be that high, but for a guy that you don't really know, relievers are volatile. And we've seen the Dodgers, weirdly, Joe Kelly's been the one guy they've, continued to go to the well with, even though he's probably one of the most volatile of all relievers. He's probably the definition of it. But yeah, I think that might be one reason pushing me. Like, the money's obviously not a big deal for the grand scheme of things for the Dodgers, but if it's going to cost, not your top prospects, and you get a year of them, and then you can kind of decide where to go from there. I like that.
Yeah, and I definitely see that. Although the flip side is, if he is really good, having Tanner Scott for 4 years would be really nice, if he's going to be that good. But it is pretty rare to find a reliever who's actually dominant for, that would be 6 straight years if we added 4 more years to Tanner Scott's current stretch of dominance. So yeah, a lot of it might come down to the length of the contract, all of that. But I also think the Dodgers, not like, it's really easy for me to spend somebody else's money and tell them what they should do. And so I'm not saying it doesn't really matter if they have to cut him in 3 years because he's not good anymore. But I do think that there is, with Mookie, and, Freddie's only under contract for 3 more years. Mookie and Ohtani are both into their 30s now. Some of these guys, not like the Dodgers window is closing. That's not what I'm saying. But I think the Dodgers window is as wide open right now as it's ever going to be. And so, I'm thinking kind of 2025, which one of these guys makes them better in 2025? And I still don't know the answer. Tanner Scott, I wish I had a crystal ball to know where Tanner Scott would sign if he doesn't sign with the Dodgers, because, it's one thing if they're taking him away from the Padres, great, because that's fewer times that Shohei Ohtani has to face him, fewer times that Freddie Freeman has to face him. But, if he's going to sign with the Marlins or the Blue Jays, it's not as big a deal to me. Devin Williams, we know where he's going to be if he doesn't get traded. And that's somewhere that's going to play the Dodgers 7 times. But if I'm just thinking about the pitcher himself adding to the Dodgers, yeah, I think I've changed my mind 35 times just today.
Yeah, I think Tanner Scott has a little bit of recency bias in him. And with a reliever, sometimes that's justified to have recency bias. I mean, you look at Tanner Scott, and he's been good the last 2 seasons, but then the 2 seasons before that, he was a full-time reliever, and he wasn't that good. Or he struck out a lot of guys, but didn't have a good ERA. And even if you look at the last 2 years, like, he struck out 104 batters in 78 innings in 2023, and then he struck out 84 batters in 72 innings last year. So while that's still good, that's a pretty significant drop in strikeouts. And, we would have to dig deeper into why. And if they do sign him, we probably would look into that. So I think Devin Williams has, been doing it longer. Yeah, he's had not great success in the, I think 2 of the 3 games he's pitched in the postseason, he's allowed runs. But I wouldn't, Pete Alonso guessing right and hitting a ball opposite field for a grand slam, I don't necessarily think that's something to be too generally concerned about. But, like I said, there's no wrong answer and there's no right answer. It's just if the Dodgers get one of them, they're in a good spot.
Yeah, that inning against the Mets, no matter how you slice it, was just 1 inning. It wasn't just the one pitch to Alonso. There was also,
got to load the bases, but
yeah, there was a walk and a single, and then the home run, and then a hit by pitch, and then another single. So, it was a really bad inning, but it was 1 inning. And Devin Williams definitely has shown that he's very, very good. And both of these guys, I think, are guys who could get even better with the Dodgers, usage-wise and pitch mix-wise, all those things. And so, I think my final answer is go get both of them.
Yeah, and that's very conceivable for the Dodgers if they really want to go that route. So But what about the rest of the bullpen or some guys that could be in the bullpen that are already on the Dodgers in their organization? We'll talk about that. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the one-stop shop for you to get tickets to any, got the hiccups, live sporting events, concerts, theater, and comedy. All that type of stuff is available on the Game Time app. And right now you can check out Game Time Picks, which makes getting tickets even easier for your favorite live events because filters out all the fluff, shows you only the best seats for the best deals. You don't have to go through all that. But if you want to go through all that, you still can. You can check out views from the seat. You can check out the all-in pricing. You can get the lowest price guarantee so you don't have to have buyer's remorse. If you buy tickets and you find some in the same section and row, the Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So you don't have to worry about it. And if you get tickets with Game Time, they have one of the best customer service policies in the game. So go check out Game Time. Download the app right now and take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. We also want to thank you if it's your last listen of the day or your third listen of the day or any listen of your day. We appreciate you. I know with us going live on YouTube a lot more these days, we're not always your first listen. I know we appreciate you, those that are here watching right now live. And we appreciate you that are listening on Friday morning on your way to work or school or wherever you're going. So we appreciate you. You can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are two 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. You can also check out the Locked On MLB podcast with our pal Sully. All right, Jeff, let's talk about the Dodger bullpen. We talked about Devin Williams, Tanner Scott, but as with anything, the Dodgers are going to have a lot of depth in the pitching department, whether it's a lot of starters, whether it's a lot of relievers, or whether it's a combination of both. Right now, on the 40-man roster, I went through it the other day, and the 40-man roster is very interesting right now because there's really not anyone you could say for sure could get, DFA'd from the pitching side. Michael Grove might be the closest, and or the guy they just added to the 40-man roster. Those might be the two closest ones where you're like, oh, yeah, if the Dodgers got rid of them, I wouldn't lose too much about it. But that means that there's a lot of pitchers on there that are, one, hurt, which there are a lot of pitchers that are hurt, and, those guys will be off the 40-man roster on the 60-day IL once we get to that point. But until that point, there's some other guys on there that are either recovering from injury or coming off a really bad season. Talking about Robbie Miller in that regard, talking about Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin in the other regard. The Dodgers will employ a 6-man rotation, which we'll get into a little bit in the next segment and kind of how that's going to work out. But yeah, Jeff, right now with all the injuries and what we know, the Dodgers bullpen is not in flux, but it might be different than it was last year.
Yeah, right now, looking at the roster, there are 6 guys who are basically guaranteed to be in the Dodgers opening day bullpen. You got Anthony Bonda, Ryan Brazier, I'm just going alphabetical order, Michael Kopech, Evan Phillips, Blake Trinan, and Alex Vesia. Those are our 6 guys who are going to be in the bullpen on opening day. Like you said, Gratterall is hurt. A lot of those guys are hurt. But other guys who will theoretically be healthy on opening day and have a shot at that are guys like Ben Kasperius, Michael Grove, Edgardo Enriquez, Landon Knack. That's kind of the main. Oh, and Justin Robleski. And some of those guys are starters but there may not be a spot for them depending on what the Dodgers do in the starting rotation. So they might be battling for a bullpen spot. And then you have guys who you just mentioned, Bobby Miller, Tony Gonsolin, and Dustin May, all of whom have been starters throughout their careers, but could end up, I think you can make a pretty good case. I'm not saying this is for sure the truth, but I think if you were in high school debate club and you were assigned the topic, make the argument that Dustin May should be a reliever or make the argument that Bobby Miller should be a reliever, you could do a pretty good debate club argument in favor of both of those guys going to the bullpen immediately.
Yeah, you throw hard, you automatically can become a reliever. Not necessarily a good one, but you can become one. With Dustin May, I think it sucks because obviously we've, had a lot of hype for him, and then he got hurt, and we got excited when he came back, and then he got hurt. Then we thought he might come back at the end of last year, and then he swallowed a T-bone steak or whatever it was and hurt his esophagus. So it's been, a not great time for him ever since, the when he came up in 2019 and we had all that promise, and, 2020 was pretty good for him as well. And then it just kind of, went off from there with injuries. But yeah, assuming he still throws hard, assuming he still has that movement on his pitches, and, you don't really need to. The issue he had when he was a starting pitcher was not getting too many strikeouts, but also because that could have been a product of one, he is throwing a lot of strikes, but two, he didn't necessarily have that strikeout pitch, or he was using a pitch that was less inferior in order to last 5-6 innings. If he doesn't have to last 5-6 innings, he can go in there pumping 101, 102 if he's all the way back, and you don't have to worry about that third pitch really.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are a reliever, you don't have to worry about seeing the same batter twice in a game, which means you don't hold anything back there. So if you have, 3 pitches, which Dustin May does, you can kind of be aggressive there. And it wouldn't shock me at all if Dustin May became a 1-inning reliever to see him throwing 102, 103 out of the bullpen. And, that kind of stuff, especially with the movement that he has, I'm not saying he would sit 103, but I think he would touch it. And I think that, he is a guy who, we have experience as Dodger fans with Eric Gagne. Eric Gagne was a terrible starting pitcher. One of my neighbors used to call him Eric Gagne with a spoon. It was the 90s. What do you expect? Late 90s, early 2000s, whenever it was. He was bad. And then he became a reliever, made some tweaks, and was awesome. And Mariano Rivera was a bad starting pitcher, best relief pitcher ever. Most of the best relievers, at least historically, these days guys are relievers in college, get drafted as relievers and pitch as relievers in the big leagues sometimes. But historically, the best relief pitchers are guys who, for whatever reason, stamina, number of pitches, whatever, or even injury history, couldn't hack it as starters. They became relievers, and Dustin May seems like he could fit that bill. And then kind of everything I just said about Dustin May, you could kind of say a lot of the same things about Bobby Miller.
Yeah, with Dustin May, I think the other part too, I believe this is his last year of team control. So the Dodgers don't necessarily have anything tied to him in terms of the future. So, it would making him a reliever this year hurt his chance to be a starter in the future? They don't really necessarily have to care about that because he might not be around for that. With Bobby Miller, yes, it's the same thing. It's tougher to see with Bobby Miller because every time we've seen him in pressure situations, not every time, a lot of times we've seen him in pressure situations, it's something that becomes a bloop single that turns into a 5-run inning, or, an error and a single becomes, a 6-run inning and he doesn't get out of the inning. But if you don't get to that point, you don't have to get to that point. And with Bobby Miller, he has the stuff. If he wants to, rear back and throw the fastball, again, he could be 101, 102. He doesn't have to use 5 different pitches. He can focus on 3 pitches or even 2 pitches, 3 to be elite, 2 to be really good. And he doesn't have to worry about all that other stuff. He doesn't have to worry about sequencing too much. He just has to rear back and fire. And I think while the issue that we've seen with Bobby Miller has come, like whether it's out of the stretch or with runners on or whatever the case is, I think if it doesn't ever get to that point because he doesn't allow runners because he's pitching differently, I think that might help out.
Yeah, and we learned from Kenley Jansen that even if you're terrible at holding runners on, you can just forget about the runners and get the batters out. And if you've got the stuff, you can do that. Arnie mentions in the chat, Dennis Eckersley was also a starter. He was kind of a different story. He was actually a good starter for a long time and then had a second career as an elite reliever. But yeah, I mean, it's, Tony Gonsolin is a little bit more interesting one because nothing about him screams he's going to get that bullpen bump. Maybe he would throw 3 miles an hour harder. And Gonsolin has, I think he has touched 97 in the big leagues probably. Yeah. I know that he touched 99 in the minors, but he's not really a hard thrower at this point in his career. And so, he's one that is less likely to me to have that big bump from the bullpen, which, depending on what the Dodgers do as far as starting pitchers, if they get Roki Sasaki, if they bring back Walker Buehler, all those things, maybe that means that Gonsolin is likely to be on the trading block, more likely than that than to be in the bullpen. But, having this firepower from some of these guys, you've got Edgardo Enriquez, you've got, guys who can throw really, really hard. That could be a fun project because, you think about Tanner Scott, and obviously those guys, all three of those guys are right-handed that we've been talking about. But you could see any one of those guys turning into a reliever who just strikes everybody out with the stuff that they have.
Yeah, and could be some different roles because of that 6-man rotation. We're going to get into a little bit about that, the logistics of what it looks like to have a 6-man rotation, and an interesting baseball that's up for action. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. You can get in on all the NFL action right now because new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The Rams-Niners game, like I said, could have went either way, and it was not a great game, and the Rams won. If you had put $5 on the Rams, you would have had 150 in bonus bets right now on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. If the game was going the way it was going, you probably would have wanted to hammer some unders because there wasn't a lot of offense going on. If you would have wanted to hammer some unders, you could have went to the FanDuel Sportsbook app because if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, it's the best place to place your live bets. You can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So go to FanDuel.com to join today. Remember, an easy $5 bet is to bet against the Raiders. They're on Monday Night Football against the Falcons. That might be the best chance to have of winning, but I don't know. I'm not going to bet on them. So you get started with 150 in bonus bets. If that first $5 bet hits, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We appreciate you if you're an everydayer. An everydayer is just someone that listens or watches every day. There's a lot of you here in the chat that are everydayers. There's a lot of you that are Locked On Dodgers insiders that are everydayers. There's a lot of you that aren't one of those people but are still an everydayer. We appreciate you just as much. But if you do want to go beyond the podcast, come a Locked On Dodgers insider, you can do so by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It's just a text message-based service where you get text updates directly from us with all the news, updates, thoughts, rumors, all that type of stuff. So that's joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers to get started there. All right, Jeff. We'll talk about the ball that's up for auction after. Let's talk about a 6-man rotation and kind of what that would look like in a few different ways. One, we do know that Shohei Ohtani will not start the season or won't be ready for opening day, whether that's Japanese opening day or domestic opening day. I think probably both would be safe to say he won't be ready for. But when he does get back into the Dodger rotation, he won't be a two-way player for a little bit because they'll have to work his way up there, which means they will be not down in arm, but kind of down in arm, I guess, in a sense. And then obviously they would need, 5 other guys to be pitching before that. And then, we did get a little bit, I think, a question yesterday that I didn't touch on about Ohtani, the plan for Ohtani when he does come back pitching. Will he need a piggyback guy? Will he be somebody that's full bore from where we go? So I guess all that leads to the conversation that we're about to have.
Yeah, Andrew Friedman mentioned the other day how because Ohtani doesn't use up one of the roster spots for a pitcher, it makes them uniquely positioned to use a 6-man rotation. And, like you said, that won't be the case immediately. One of our insiders, Scott Bryson, sent us a message asking us to dig in and explain a little bit about how that works. And basically to be, the roster rules is that you can only have 13 pitchers on your roster and only people who are pitchers can pitch, except in certain situations. That they did this to cut down on position players pitching. And so you cannot pitch in a game if you aren't a pitcher unless you're either up by 10 runs or down by 8 runs, a couple other exceptions, but that's basically it. And the benefit of being a two-way player is that you can pitch anytime you want and you don't count as one of those 13 pitchers. Shohei Ohtani will be a two-way player, but in order to qualify, you have to have 20 innings pitched and 20 games played as a hitter, in which you get at least 3 plate appearances. And that, once you qualify, it's good for that year and the next year. And so that's why Ohtani doesn't have to re-qualify at the beginning of every year, but this year he does because he didn't pitch at all last year. And so he won't qualify as a two-way player until he gets to 20 innings pitched. Now, if he's ready to pitch to start games in early April, a week or so into the season, maybe, probably by the end of April, he'd be up to 20 innings pitched, probably. Even if they are taking it easy with him, 4 or 5 starts, he's probably at the 20 innings pitched. He'll obviously get to the 20 games played as a hitter before he gets to the 20 innings pitched. As soon as he gets there, then boom, he's a two-way player. They can then at that point add another pitcher. But until then, do they go with the 6-man rotation, or do they and that's something that's going to be really interesting for them to have to figure out. Some of that will depend on their personnel. If one of their starters is Landon Knack, who has options available, and I actually haven't dug into their off days that first month of the season, but maybe they just go with a 5-man rotation using off days, use Knack as a spot starter once or twice in there, and option him in between. And it doesn't have to be Knack, but if one of their starters has options available, even Roki Sasaki, if they sign him, he will technically have options available. So they could send him to the minors in between starts a couple times for 15 days. So there's options there, but it is something that for the first, until Ohtani qualifies, the Dodgers won't have that competitive advantage of being more suited to a 6-man rotation.
Yeah, looking at the schedule, the earlier Ohtani comes back, the better it would be for the Dodgers. They have every Thursday off in the month of April, and they have the first Sunday of the season off. When you get into May, they have 3 total days off, or 4 total days off in the month of May, the first Thursday, the last 2 Thursdays, and 1 Monday. So, if you came back first week of April, that'd be great because they have all those off days. They can work around it. He comes back in May, it would be a case where they probably would have to, move some guys around and figure things out. But ultimately, it just depends. If Ohtani is a guy that's coming back full go, it could just be 4 starts. All he needs 4, average 5 innings, and boom, that's all it is. If it's less, that we'll have to see what happens there. If it is less, or they're going to have a piggyback situation, maybe those guys, Dustin May, Bobby Miller, like we talked about, maybe they'll be, or Gonsolin will be, groomed to be multi-inning guys. We'll have to wait and see, and it'll all kind of shake itself out. But at the end of the day, like it won't handicap them unless a lot of guys get hurt in the first month, because the Dodgers will have, at the very least, you would imagine that Knack and Casparius won't be slotted into a rotation spot to start the year, and there's 2 guys right there that could give you some innings.
Yeah, and the other thing is, doesn't mean they can't do a 6-man rotation. They just could go with the 6-man rotation and just only have a 7-man bullpen during that time, in which case guys like Knack and Casparius being one of those relievers would definitely be a benefit, because, hey, you have a reliever who can throw 4 innings that can save a lot of other relievers' arms or whatever. It's one of the things. Obviously, the thing I'm looking most forward to about the Dodgers season is the Dodgers being back, being at the stadium for the ring ceremony, all those things. But the little things, like how are they going to navigate the 6-man rotation? Pretty interesting. How good is our Tanner Scott and Devin Williams going to look in Dodger blue, since I can't dream about Juan Soto in Dodger blue anymore. Maybe Corbin Burns, now that we know the Giants are interested in him, might as well sign him too. All that stuff. It's going to be fun to see, but seeing how the Dodgers handle their starting rotation is going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah, and obviously they'll probably sign at least, or trade for at least one more starter, and then maybe that'll, put stuff a little bit more in a perspective. Like, it's December 12th. They don't get back into spring until 2 more months from now, around this time in February, and then they'll move from there, and I'm sure there'll be a few different changes before then. One last thing, just more of a funny footnote more than anything else. It appears that the ball that was dropped by Aaron Judge is being auctioned off. And I think, well, the screenshot it was 18,000. I think it was at. I don't know what it's at now, but
Last I heard, it was in the 40s.
Wow. Yeah. So I don't like. Did the authenticator just decide, oh, this ball might be a big deal? I don't know. I wonder how they decided.
Well, they authenticate every ball that comes off the field, everything they can. I'm wondering how the Dodgers ended up with it, because that game was at Yankee Stadium. I would assume that it would be the Yankees ball boy who it got tossed to when it got put out of play. So I don't know if the Dodgers and Yankees worked something out, or if that one happened to get tossed into the Dodgers dugout instead. Yeah, I'm not sure how they ended up with it. It's not a ball that I would be interested in at all. One of the things that, like, I'm fine with people celebrating the Dodger World Series however they want to, but I focus all my energy on the Dodgers. And so a ball that's only famous because a guy on the other team made a bad play doesn't interest me at all. I would love to have Freddie Freeman's home run ball. I would love to have, a lot of things that the Dodgers did, the last pitch that Buehler threw.
Without that ball, who knows?
Well, yeah, but, it's not, for me, yeah, I agree that it was a big moment in the series, but it was a big moment in a bad way for the Yankees, whereas I want a big moment in a good way for the Dodgers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just count it as a good moment for the Dodgers because it led to, obviously it didn't lead directly to anything. Well,
but it's not being advertised as the ball that Tommy Edman hit in the 5th inning.
Well, it does say Tommy Edman's name on there.
Yeah, but it's the Aaron Judge ball, and that's kind of what it boils down to for me. I want a ball. I want the Walker Buehler ball or the Freddie Freeman ball or something like that,
Yeah. Well, for 40,000, I would have won it anyway. So yeah, I'll spend my money elsewhere. But whoever gets it, I'm sure it'd be funny if it was a Yankee fan that got it and then like burned it or something, like maybe trying to get rid of a curse or something like that. Maybe those two guys that took the ball from Mookie are buying it. Who knows? But we shall see.
They need to get a ball somehow.
Yeah. You got anything else, Jeff, before we head out for the week?
No, my voice held out for this episode. Hopefully it'll be better for Sunday night. Although based on past experience earlier this year, it'll probably be worse, but we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, we shall see. We will be back Sunday night, probably live on YouTube, unless the Dodgers do get Tanner Scott or Devin Williams over the weekend. Then we'll talk to you then. But that's going to do it for this week. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. And make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to get notified when episodes are ready or when we're going live on YouTube. You can become an everydayer by listening and watching every day. And we appreciate you if you would. If you are not an everyday already, just add one episode a week until you get up to 5, and then boom, now you're an everydayer. You can go beyond the podcast, come Locked On Dodgers Insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Get text directly from us, keeping you up to date with all the Dodgers things you need to be kept to date on. You can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are two 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. You can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff's on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us with any questions or comments. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us when you get in your car. If you're at home, to your smart device for the podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you in a few days.